In this episode, we are going to be reviewing Red Desert, which was released in 1964. This was directed by Michelangelo Antonioni. He also wrote the screenplay with Tonino Guerra, and it starred Monica Vitti and Richard Harris. Welcome to Robert Bellissimo at the Movies. This is a YouTube video podcast where we explore storytelling on film, as well as interviews with industry professionals who work in film, television, and theater. I want to welcome back to the show Kathy Rupchick, who is a Canadian actor and writer, and she has appeared in numerous award-winning films, as well as commercials and a variety of popular TV docudramas. She's also the co-creator of the web series, aka Hammertown, where she plays the role of Amelia. Kathy, welcome back. Thanks for joining me again.
Thank you. I'm really excited to do this. Thank you.
No, my pleasure. And I know that, last time we talked about also an Italian film, Conversation Piece, Visconti. And then I remember you had mentioned you were going to see Red Desert not long after that. So what did you think when you initially saw it? And did you have a different experience this time around?
The first time I was, gripped, really fascinated. It starts, I didn't know anything about it. So I just sort of dove in, and it starts on such an apocalyptic seeming note, right from the beginning with the weird, like industrial sounds. You're trying to figure out, is that like actually music? Is this the score? And then there's that operatic kind of, but not operatic, woman's singing voice, and then it sounds sad and eerie and creepy, and it's so grim. It opens with this intense industrial hue, and then all of a sudden there's a pop of color. Monica Vitti in her green coat with a child walking through this horrible, shitty, not a scrap of green anywhere, grass or tree landscape, with the industrial backdrop and everything belching. So I thought, oh wow, that just throws you into a place where you're feeling it, like you've got heels on. 1964 women always wore heels and nice coats and everything else. And so anyways, I stuck with it. I was really disturbed but fascinated, and I came away with a lot of questions, and I thought, okay, I didn't watch it again right away. I watched another Antonioni film, I think, and that was a while ago. Then last week I rewatched it, and I think what really struck me, I think I was jarred the first time, but what really struck me this time was like watching a film that is sort of, he was like heralding and just embracing industrialism, despite the poison and the toxicity and everything else. In this world today, where this is just sacrilegious, completely sacrilegious, and this is just the proof of, where we are now. It was just, wow. I was thinking anybody who's watching this has got to put it in context and do a little research on where Italy was at the time, because it's really quick to judge and say, oh, they're so oblivious, they're so stupid, they're so ignorant. It's just like, what have they done? But I think it's really important to, with a lot of, movies and stories that are historically offensive, we need to put them in context. So I did, and then I paid a little bit more attention this time to the characters and the story and what was really going on.
Yeah.
I thought.
So when you say like you felt that the director was embracing the industrialized environment, like, is that what you mean? Like in a good way? Because it's funny because he actually said that as well, because like that was like progress at the time, like because like that was just like open, that was just open fields at that time, right? And then now open land, and then they began to have these factories and industries and all the that you see in the film, and because a lot of people see the film, and I can see why, as that the environment is what is leading to this anxiety that she's experiencing and this feeling of like impending doom. But Antonioni actually said that actually it was that he was celebrating the fact that there was progress being made, and that Monica Vitti's character, because of her emotional state, just can't see it or can't appreciate it, or which is I can kind of see what he means, because it's all framed from her point of view. So she's not looking at these things as anything good. But I felt that the environment was part of why she had this impending feeling of doom. But I thought it was actually more from this car accident she had, now we would look at it as like PTSD, because like just the shock, like her husband talks about how she was like the shock of it, the near death, and now she can't, and like you see her wake up from that dream where she says she feels like she's sinking in quicksand. So she's constantly feeling like she doesn't know where to look or how to get rid of this anxiousness, and no one seems to be able to help her. But I thought it would had more to do with that experience as opposed to the environment. I don't know what you thought.
I thought that too. I thought that too until I read his quote about what people assumed he was doing, but what he actually meant. And it's a long quote, but to address her neurosis, he says, "The neurosis I sought to describe in Red Desert is above all a matter of adjusting. There are people who do adapt and others who can't manage, perhaps because they're too tied to ways of life that are by now out of date." Right. So he found industrialization, like the beauty in it. And there's a comment too about, people are too used to seeing trees, right?
Right.
This is what he said, something like to that effect. And they need to adapt and see the beauty that comes through industrialization and progress.
Yeah, which is so strange, because he's shooting, like, this is his first color film, and he's not, like, it's very stylized, like it's very expressionistic, and everything is gray. I mean, even that one moment, that scene where she's sitting beside that vendor, and he's selling apples, and the apples are gray, right? So it's like, I can't see why, like, if he had shot everything like in like red and green and beautiful, and she was still so depressed, I think that would have came through more. I know that the Russian filmmaker Tarkovsky felt that Antonioni got too hung up on the aesthetic and focused less on the story. I don't know about that, because I do really, really like it, but I'm struggling to see what Antonioni what his intentions were based on what he's saying. But maybe it's one of those, like the old saying, go trust the art and not the artist. I don't know, because I didn't feel that what he says the film is about really comes through in that way. It's a little, it's odd, isn't it?
It is odd, and it's hard to know if it's just the way we see things now and what we understand about mental health issues even as well. It was so disregarded, with women, especially back in the 60s and beyond. And well, not only up until maybe a couple of decades ago was it really recognized as something that really does need a lot of support and resources, right? So back then it was a given. I mean, even the way Ugo, that's her husband's name, I think, Ugo, sort of dismisses her as he's explaining to Corrado, she had an accident, everything. Ever since then, things haven't been quite right. There's this just detachment. It's like this thing that happened to her, she happens to be my wife. I don't know, she's on her own with it, trying to get through it. And every once in a while, she wakes me up at night disturbed. And, I'll still try to push myself on her because I have my needs, and she's got to do the work and deal with it. And like, I don't know what the heck that is. So, but I think that was typical, right? And I think Corrado coming in and showing that he sees her, as not only a beautiful woman, but a damaged and neglected woman, a privileged woman, but he sees sides of her that Ugo does not. He doesn't know necessarily what to do with it, because he's in his own place himself. But I think he kind of stands out as an anomaly for the times of men paying attention to women's mental health, you know.
Yes, that's a good point. Yeah, I really like that about their relationship, and because it's really like her story, and Corrado is very much reacting off of her story, because he has a similar problem, existential problem, whereas he's talking about the fact that he's moving from Milan to Bologna and back and forth, and so he's like, you don't know exactly what his why he's so unhappy, or why he feels he can't find a place to live where he feels happy. So his solution is to like keep moving. But you really get an understanding that he is able to see her, and as you said, he's compassionate and understanding towards her. And there's a scene later where she says to him, if my husband looked at me the way you did, that then he would understand me, right? So they do, and of course this flirtation begins, and there's a mutual attraction there and understanding. So I really liked all of that, because he just connected to her and understood her. And even later on, that scene where they're in that shack with all their friends, and when the boat shows up and the guys are having a quarantine because they're all really sick, and she says, she looks out the window and she says something along the lines of, I just don't know where to look, like everywhere she looks like makes her feel upset. And then he says, you don't know where to look and I don't know where to live. He totally understands her. And what I like so much about that scene, again, the way that they're using color in this film, the beautiful cinematography from Carlo De Palma, because that they're using color to obviously evoke certain feelings. And what I liked is that whole shack is very gray and grim and broken down, but then this one room they're in, the walls are red, it had like, and of course, it has this heat about it, and the fact that they're all like joking about sex, and like it looked like it was going to turn into an orgy all of a sudden. This one guy, like he's there with his wife, but then he's like opens up the other woman's dress and he's like rubbing her back, and they're all like, and it was the only time in the film you saw her like relaxed and happy and jovial, like the whole, like throughout most of the film she's so anxious. And I thought that was an interesting different side of her personality, and like these people just sort of finding some kind of joy in this near orgy scene. I don't know what you thought about that.
Yeah, well, initially I thought there's got to be some history here. Like this, they didn't just stumble upon this shack. This is like their honeycomb hangout, right?
Yeah.
And it's got to be like there's got to be, they're very comfortable there, and they're comfortable with each other, and it seems like almost like a meetup place, like a ritual. It just is so just so shocking to see where it is, and like the way they're joking about the landscape and the wasteland and the toxicity all around it. It's just, you get the sense this must have been a beautiful countryside, and it's so gross. I mean, they're laughing about, we used to be able to fish here, but the last time, I think Ugo makes a comment, he's explaining to Corrado, and Juliana laughs along. We were here and a guy caught an eel, and he said, now the eels taste like crude oil. And then they laugh about it. It's like, wow. And then he gives her a shot about wearing what does he say to her? He says something about Ugo says to her, gives her a shot about wearing worn down shoes to this wasteland, right? Like it's just a weird thing. It's like, what are they trying to maintain here? Like, is this a place where it used to be beautiful and they used to come and they were like, all dressed up and everything else? None of that has changed. It was just such a weird contrast, right? No one's wearing their grubbies.
Yeah, it's like this one little bedroom room is like the only thing from their past that is still like, it's the only room with this color, whereas excuse me, whereas everything else was so grim, and it sort of brought them back, or brought her back to a better time. It's like it's just this
Yeah.
tiny space. I really like that scene. It's a scene I always remember. Like I've seen this a few times now, maybe 3 or 4 times, and it's a scene that it's really it really informs so much about, you know, the way things used to be for them, and now how they just have this little space now that makes her feel better, or puts her in a
Hmm.
better emotional space,
Right, right.
you
I
know.
mean, it's interesting. You can look at it now and make an analysis, and I doubt how much of it was intentional at the time, but people with PTSD or a brain injury where, you know, the long-term memories bring them back to a more regulated place versus the short term seemed to be the situation. Like, I'm not a
Mhm.
doctor, I don't know for sure, but
Right.
it seemed, you know, you could make that conclusion almost like, oh, this is something that connects with her because it's long-term memory. And you know, she feels at peace, you know, she feels comfortable, she feels, you know,
Yes. Yeah.
she's with her people. And but it quickly changes, you know, once they leave, and they
Oh,
leave in a
yeah.
panic. And I mean, she drives off in the
Yeah.
vehicle
She
to
almost
get her
drives right into the water. Yeah, she
right in the
panics
water.
when that boat shows up with all those men who were sick. And what I like so much about that scene is then she looks at everybody and they're just staring back at her, and then they disappear in the
Yeah,
fog. And it was,
right.
to me, I felt that, I mean, people can interpret that in many ways, but they all look back at her with such a neutral expression, and that they just disappear. And I thought, again, it was this, you know, because she talks about how people are separate,
Mhm.
and that she's, in other words, alone with her problems, and that these people can't reach out to her. They can't. They may as well not be there, you know.
Yeah.
And as they disappear, and Corrado later has a similar experience where he's talking to all these men about these various jobs they're going
Mm.
to do, and then he looks at each man in a row, and then next to them there's no more men, just like empty bottles, you know, as the camera keeps panning to the right, and then he looks at another guy and it's just blurry, you know. So
Yeah.
he's feeling very alone and alienated, even though he's amongst all these men. Again,
Right.
you don't really know, his problems are more vague because it's really her story, you know. I mean,
Yeah.
is that how you would, I was curious if you, did you interpret that, those moments, in a similar way, or did you see something else there?
No, similar way, similar way. Particularly, you know, he does zone out at that meeting. I mean, he's on this recruitment drive. It's pretty important, right? But I remember him saying earlier on when he meets Ugo at the refinery that he points to a building or a set of buildings, and basically says, you know, more or less, he's inherited that. And he had plans, but now he's stuck with this. So it's sort of like everything's a millstone around his neck that he didn't ask for, but just got
Yeah,
put on
yeah,
him.
that's right.
And
That's
he's got
right.
to follow through, right? So he's doing his job. He's trying to recruit people for this, I think, Argentinian project, right?
Yeah.
But um, it's just, you know, I think he's just seeing the futility because the men need work, but nobody seems to be really connecting. Like everything for him is just draining. And I think, you know, when he zones out, um that's where that's where I really, you know, connected how he and Juliana are kindred souls, whether they necessarily both realize it or not, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I love when we first see her, like you were talking earlier, and it was funny, like this neurotic moment of buying a sandwich from one of the men that he
Right.
already bit into. And I
Yeah.
just thought it was like,
Yeah. I
it
wanted
just,
to know more about that.
yeah. And
There's
I think he was, you know, I think he was communicating that there's something wrong with her, you know, like that she has these, you know, there's clearly something, you know, very neurotic about her. And then the relationship with her husband, was interesting because, as you said, like he doesn't know how to help her. He doesn't even seem too interested in helping her. Like when she wakes up after that nightmare and she's taking her temperature, and like he's trying to calm her down, but he can't really seem to do it. But but what was interesting was the fact that he worked in this industrialized industry, and he knew how to like put all these things together. Like when the little boy is playing with that toy that could stand up, and then his son says, "How does the toy stand up?" He's like, "Oh, well, they put a device in it that they use for boats to keep boats steady in harsh waters." And so, to him, everything is like, "Oh, I can fix it. I can put it together," because you could do that with objects, but with a person, you can't. Like, people are much more complicated and have feelings. So it's like he's only capable if it's like two, like, if things add up, 2 + 2 = 4, but people are not that. Nothing is that simple, right? So with his wife, he's clueless.
Absolutely clueless. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you can see like his son, and of course he's got a son. Every toy in the kids' room has an industrial theme, right? It's
Yes.
either robotic or whatever. It's like, this is how you play. You play with the brain, right?
Yeah.
Child.
Exactly.
And and they're literally living right beside the canal. Like, even their home looks very industrial. I mean, it looks beautiful, very modernistic in a lot of ways, but like, just like the stair rail is piping, right? It's and you see the ships going by. They're this far away, rooms width away from the canal, it seems. It's just it just permeates everything. You're right. I think he's just we know these people too. I mean, they're captains of industry, and there's people who do just see people in the sense of, a commodity towards gain, right? Economic gain. And he's an engineer. He sees things in black and white, and it's really clear. It's really clear.
Yeah, no, I really like that that relationship between them just being, so void of any kind of compassion, which is of course where, Corrado steps in, and naturally you could see that something would happen, because she's flirtatious back, but then when towards the end of the film, when they do succumb to their impulses and have sex, what I liked about it, it wasn't like so romantic. I mean, he was like seducing her when she was like really upset. And she's trying to back off at first, and then she goes with it. But then immediately afterwards, she says to him, "Well, you can't help me. You don't know. You're just like my husband. You don't know. You don't know how to help me, and you didn't help me." And then that's it. He walks off. I mean, I think he just threw his hands up at her. So what was interesting was that she told him earlier that the doctor in the hospital said that, she needs to find something to love or someone to love. And she had like, this guy's giving her more love, but like, maybe she didn't love him back, or maybe the guilt of cheating, or why she suddenly says to him, you didn't help me. Or like, what exactly did she want? It's sort of like, it's sort of, I don't want to, I mean, my impulse is to say self-destructive. I don't know if it's necessarily that, but I mean, people can take it's a very ambiguous film. Right? It's so mysterious that she's just this impending feeling of doom. She's just really struggling to help herself. She's looking for people to help her, but she doesn't know how to do it herself, or find the right ways in which to help herself. I don't know if that was something that popped out to you or not.
Yeah, oh, for sure it did. Because I remember thinking, well, what would it take to make her feel like she's getting help? But she's so isolated. Like, her friends don't really seem to be there for her any more than her husband is. They'll step in, but everybody's separate from her. And I think there is a really strong self-destructive component because, she's, you know, I was like initially thinking, is this going to be a rape scene? Because
Right.
she's so violent and erratic in her reactions, but it isn't. You know, it's like she's just trying to connect and to follow through but resist. I think she's just in this place. It's like, you know, it's so static. Like it's like,
Yeah.
ugh,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
But after, you know, she lets him down, and I think he drops her off somewhere, or she runs off. He's going to take her somewhere in the car, probably take her home. And then she ends up at night, like at that ship.
Yeah.
That's where I got really unnerved. Like that whole scene, you know.
Yeah.
And I thought, like, okay, Corrado isn't help for her, but now she's headed to a ship. And so it's like the desperation to get help is so extreme. It's like she's you know, just like a little something is saying, get on a ship and go away. Like you got to like get away from all this.
Yeah.
And then she spends so much time with that foreign sailor trying to talk to him. It's like,
yeah, and he can't speak Italian.
You can't speak Italian, but you're just thinking, what are they saying? What is he saying? And what's going to happen here? You know, thankfully, you know, there's no danger, but I think it was sort of like a tipping point. And, you know, by the end, she seems to have come to this place where she's sort of bought in. Like, I don't know, I get that sense. You know, she just seems there's a little bit more ease to her, acceptance, resignation. And it seems like, you know, the neurons aren't all pinging all over the place. So I felt awful for Corrado. And I think, you know, she bails on her shop too, right? I mean, that was a search, you know, like that's a search too.
She was going to start a business, but she didn't know exactly what it was going to be.
Right. Maybe ceramics, right? But there's not a soul. Who's she going to sell to, right? There's like not a soul in this village. I think too, just going back to that scene where she introduces him to the town, to her shop, I mean, and it's so gray and that vendor's sitting there and everything's gray. Part of me wondered, is he real? Like, does she only see him?
Right.
But after that, they go in the car to another area. I'd call it a suburb. It looked like a new development because he wants to recruit a guy to come and work on the ships. And I noticed all of a sudden the color's back. Like there's a rose growing in the garden.
Right.
You know, like just one. And there's color again. Like there's color in this area. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? Did you notice that? And why would there just be a pop of color in this area? Like it was.
Well, I mean, I think the intent was, it was almost as if he was leading the audience to think that, oh, like, you know, this is someone that she'll fall in love with, and maybe that will help her mental health. But then as the film progresses, he denies that because then she has that, she can have that. But then it's like, no, like she turns him down. Like now, is that because she was married and she loves her husband? Is that out of guilt, or does she truly think that he didn't help her or he can't help her? But I think he was making you feel, and I think that she was probably feeling good around him. I mean, the fact that she was seen by him, and she does brighten up around him, like she is flirtatious, and then, but then it's not really the solution. It's not for her anyways. I mean, maybe for someone else, but I think that was the feeling to say, oh, okay, here's something that is going to help her. And then no, ultimately it wasn't going to help her. And I think that the scene, what was comical about that scene at the ship with the foreigner was that she's, you know, she talks about the people are separate, you know, like if I prick you, or she says something along the lines of, if someone pricks me or I prick you, you know, you'll be hurt, not me. And then she goes, she says something along the lines of, I have to see that the things that happen in my life is because it's my life. And I think she was beginning to just accept things as they are, just sort of breathe and be able to just step back and not always look for all of these answers. You know, even when she thought, when her son was faking that he couldn't walk, and then like she's tells, trying to pass the time as the doctors come to do all these kind of tests and telling him stories. And then she tells the story of the little girl, isolated girl on a beach. And then she kept hearing this voice singing, and then she couldn't find who was singing. And it was like this beautiful, that the rocks were singing. And I think, it's like, well, why include this in the film? And I think it was like that it was very symbolic of the fact that she, like, the little girl was looking for the answers to this beauty, and not being able to just sit and listen, and just, who cares where it's coming from. We're missing life because we're always looking for the question marks, whereas she's looking for so many answers to her problems, instead of being like, you know what, I give in to my problems. I think she was beginning to at the end. Was that something you had thought of, or did you think anything else about that?
Well, yeah, I think so. And I think, like, back to the question about the colorization, I'm wondering too, because you just reminded me, that was another scene that was colorized, was her storytelling about the girl at the seaside. And then when her and Corrado go to visit this other man, but he's not home, so they meet his wife, their whole neighborhood is colorized. So I'm thinking, that's what I'm wondering, are these moments and symbolize, does this symbolize her hope, or her, her hope, or her curiosity, or even just like a little sense of adventure that gets colorized? Because going with him to this next place, I'm thinking, that's odd. Like, she's just showing him his shop. He needs to go visit somebody in a village, and they plan to go together. It's as if she was going to go anyways. And the vendor there has colored fruit, right? Like, his vegetables are colored.
I didn't notice that. That's a good point.
Yes. And like I say, there was one rose in the grass, and it's colored, and there's grass and it's colored, and the structures are colored. So that plus, this ocean story, seaside story. Like I guess, like her, maybe I'm just trying to overthink it too, and I'm trying to figure out the meaning. But where he did decide to put color in, are we supposed to pick up that these are her little moments of, whether she's aware of it or not, peace, or
that's what I thought. That's what I think.
A little bit of joy, right?
Yeah. That's what I think, and it goes back to the shack, right? Just that one room is red, and that's where he's like happy and peaceful, and like the little girl in the ocean, it's like when she was able to just listen to the singing rocks, and she, like, like, that was okay. So that is what I took from it. And what was interesting about, you wonder, well, why does this little boy fake that he can't walk? And I, saw that as maybe because his mother was always so anxious and distracted. It was like a way to get her attention, right? Which is like pretty twisted. But at the same time, that is really what is when she runs to the ship. At that point, I think she was like, oh my God, even if my child would do this to me, I got to get out of here. Antonioni was also love painting. I mean, you could really see that this film, not that there are any direct references to certain paintings, but it feels like a painting. I mean, every color, like him and De Palma, fought over every single frame of what colors to use and where, because he was not someone who was going to use color and take it for granted. Like, if he was going to use color, then he was going to use it in a very specific way. And I know that one of my favorite filmmakers, Sidney Lumet, he loved this film so much that he used De Palma for a film he did that I haven't seen. It's called The Arrangement, which Lumet said wasn't very good. But he learned a lot how to use color from De Palma. I thought that the performances overall were really good, but Monica Vitti's just incredible in this. I mean, I haven't, there isn't a lot of movies like that really explore anxiety so directly, and like she's so often in the film so anxious and panicking, and I like that, particularly waking up and taking her temperature right away because of the panic she's experiencing. I just, as she says, she's afraid of color, she's afraid of people. That is hard to achieve in a narrative, I imagine. But I thought, and to perform it, just this constant feeling of edge, I thought she did that so well.
She did it so well. Her quirks, her mannerisms are so good. Her reactions, like there's just not any, pre-planning in anything. It's just wow. You're just imagining being in the presence of this woman, and you can't really help her, but you don't know what's coming next, right? And you can't get into her brain, like but yet you could have a conversation with her. But yeah, it was really impressive. Like that was really impressive. And I just thought, wow, if you just tell yourself as an actor that you're afraid of almost absolutely everything, like you don't even know what you're not afraid of.
Right.
Where can that take you?
Yeah.
It just, oh, I was just so impressed, and so different from all of her other roles. Like she was, always sort of bourgeois, sort of loving woman who, that was her world, right?
Yeah.
And she brings some of that to this, like just in her presence. She's not a woman who's down on her luck. She's still, she's the wife of an industrialist engineer.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty good station in life in Italy in 1964, I'm thinking. But she's just got that absolute raw fragility because of her condition. And I just thought it was just so great how it wasn't tempered at all. It was just, wow, it's there.
Oh, absolutely. No,
there.
she's incredible. I've only seen the movies she did with Antonioni, but apparently she did a lot of comedies, and which, when you watch her in these films that are not funny at all, I mean, there are some like quirky moments like that we see in this film that have some humor in it, but apparently she is like really funny, like really good in comedy. So I have to see more of her comedies.
I would love to see one of her comedies. Like, does one come to mind that you have heard?
Nothing in particular, but just apparently she did a number, and apparently she had said that she was offered a comedy around this period of when she was working with Antonioni, and he had said do it, because he actually just in life found her hilarious as well. So he thought it would be perfect for her. And you wouldn't think, right, like that this guy would be the one to say, yeah, go do some comedy.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Wow.
But another interesting bit of trivia was that Richard Harris, who plays Corrado, who's an English actor, and they dubbed him for the film, which was common in Italy. People were either they were dubbed by someone else if they weren't from Italy, or they didn't even record sound, so the actress had to dub. Like Vitti would have to have done her whole performance in post, in the editing as well, in post production. But apparently I don't know if apparently David Hemmings, who was in Blow Up, said in his autobiography that Richard Harris was kicked off because he punched Antonioni in the face.
Really?
Yeah, and that he walked. I don't know if that's necessarily what happened, but yeah, I mean, he said that that he walked off the set, which is true, because apparently Antonioni told him to walk in a shot in a diagonal line, and when he asked him why, Antonioni had just said. Antonioni said, because I'm telling you to, like,
this sounds familiar.
Along those lines, he's like, I'm the director, do it, something along those lines. And apparently he stormed off, and he was also supposed to be doing, I have it here, because this film was behind schedule at this stage. So Harris was due to start work on Major Dundee, another film he did right after that. And so I suppose he was getting impatient as well. So apparently he walked off. I mean, obviously it was pretty late in production because he's in the whole movie. So where hilarious. They were using a double, I don't know.
Oh, wow. Wow. So we don't see in this movie anything Richard Harrisy, but something Richard Harrisy happened behind
Yes.
the scenes. That's great. He didn't let us down. Because he didn't let us down. Because
Yeah.
he's just, he fascinated me watching him in a role like this, because he's pretty, some would say almost milquetoast, right? Like just
Yeah.
very, and some would say doltish. Like he's just sort of this, guy who seems a little aimless, but isn't aimless. He's got a mission to do, but he just is not Richard Harris, right?
Right.
Just not at all.
Yeah, no, it's a very different. I don't know his work too well, but from what I've seen, like this was very different in his filmography. But nonetheless, I enjoy him in it. I mean, I everyone.
Me too.
Everyone is really, really good. I mean, it's Vitti's story, so we obviously she had the richest part. I mean, it's such a great role for an actor. But yeah, no, I like it a lot. I mean, I think it was interesting because I put on social media when I was watching it the other day, and I got some interesting comments where some people felt, oh, it's not as good as the trilogy he did with Vitti, which is La Notte and La Ventura and Le Cliché. And then other people were like, I don't know what it was about, but I was really enjoying it. It's interesting to hear how people have felt about it. No, I love it. I again, it's a film that you can see again and again because he doesn't feed you any answers. It is really, really an ambiguous film. And I to me, it is really more about this anxiety and this, as opposed to a lot of people, like we were saying, have latched on to the environment affecting her. And yeah, I mean, that comes through strong, whether that was Antonioni's intention or not. But I think it really has to do just with that accident she had, or maybe she just was born with some kind of mental disorder that was like never properly diagnosed, and she doesn't exactly know the root of it. I thought, to me, it was really more about that.
I think so too. I think we have to pay attention to that, because she tells Corrado that in the hospital, she confesses that she tried to commit suicide, but her husband doesn't know. And the doctors promised that they would never tell Ugo. So her husband doesn't know that. So that's more than just having a bad accident and not being quite right after the accident, right?
Yeah.
And then it got me to thinking, like in my imagination, well, what led to the accident? You go back and back and back. So I think it's that. And I think that deserves attention, and then so you take someone who is so, is dealing with issues that are so deep and put them in an environment like that. Like we become like the people around us. We become like our environment oftentimes as humans. And it's just almost like hell. In a lot of ways, from the steam hissing through the ground that they're just like circumnavigating. Even that kid, her son, what was his name? Valerio. Like he's just poking like the steaming ooze that's coming out of the ground, and there's a valve that goes off, and it's just all sort of taken in stride. But it's like hell. Like I'm thinking sulfur and brimstone and wow.
Oh, no, definitely.
Right.
Definitely. And I particularly like the last scene with her son. And then he says like, he's looking at the poison, like she's like, what's that? The yellow, gas in the air. And she's like, oh, that's poison. And, and he's like, well, are the birds going to die when they go into it? And then she goes, well, they know better not to go. So I was like, does she leave with him? Like what, like this, is she saying, in other words, like what am I meant to take from that? Like, is she saying, in other words, well, let's just not look at the things that upset us? Or is it as simple as that? Or is she saying, the birds don't know better not to go there, and now I know better not to live here?
Right.
I don't know, right?
I don't know either. I was thinking both things. She says they've learned not to fly there. So yes, is that her saying she's learned not to, expect change to happen in her way, or she's learned to accept what she's living, or and not fight it, or has she learned
Exactly.
not to tolerate it and not to live with it? And it's just left open. But I do detect this. There's a strength in her at that point.
Yeah, for sure.
Right.
Yeah, no, I think it is hopeful. Whether she's going to stay there but accept her situation and find that sense of peace, that those moments that she had in the film where she had it, or is she just like gonna leave, right? But I think either way, I think that's there's hope there that she's just gonna do something about it, as opposed to expecting others to solve everything. I mean, I mean, people can help you and they should help you, but you have to also help yourself. There's only so much that a doctor or anyone can do for you in these situations, right?
And we're absolutely, she truly only has herself, it's in this situation anyways. So
exactly. But no, I like it. I really, really like this film a lot. Was there anything else you wanted to mention?
No, I think we covered a lot.
Yes.
No, I don't think so. I really liked it too. I would say I'll watch it a third time, at least a fourth time, and I will definitely recommend and share it with people. I would. I think it's actually an important film to watch in this day and age, because I think, like I was saying earlier, it's important to put things in context. And I don't know what that area of Italy looks like now. But history's history, and it's fantastic. I just thought it was a great movie all the way around.
Yeah, no, I totally
not to say I'm a pro-industrialist, pro-chemical plant person. That's not that at all. It's just it's fascinating.
Yeah,
it's just a really fascinating topic to view right now.
Oh, no, I totally agree. Where's the best place for people to follow you on social media if they want to follow what you're doing as an actor?
Probably Instagram, and I think it's Cat and the Hammer is my handle there, and Facebook, Twitter I'm rarely on, but those would be the big ones. I think IMDb can go on there too.
Great. Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, I'll leave the links in the description box below where people can follow Kathy, what she's up to as an actor. And your web series that's on YouTube, right?
That's on YouTube.
Okay, great.
That's on YouTube, aka Hammertown.
Hammertown, great. So I'll which is a great watch. I love it.
Oh, thanks.
So I'll leave the links in the description box below where you can follow Kathy and check out her web series. So Kathy, thanks again for joining me. Always a pleasure.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it. Thank you. It was really great to discuss this film. Loved it.
No, I totally agree. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching and or listening. If you are currently listening to my YouTube video podcast on the audio version and you've run out of episodes to listen to, head over to the YouTube channel where every single episode that I have ever recorded can be found, youtube.com/Robert Bellissimo at the movies. I also want to thank all of my members on Patreon. If you're interested in becoming a member of my Patreon, head over to the Patreon link, patreon.com/Robert Bellissimo at the movies. Patreon is bonus content that I create month in and month out, and it is based on polls that I put out at the beginning of every single month, which as a member, you will have access to vote on. So if you like my work and you're interested in supporting me over on Patreon, head over to the link for full details. And lastly, if this is your first time here on my YouTube channel, please consider subscribing by pressing the Robert Bellissimo at the movies logo. It is absolutely free to do so. The logo is floating above my head in the top left corner to your top left in just a second. Just click on that and then click the bell in order to get a notification every time I release one of my new episodes or when I go live. Thank you so much, everyone. I will see you in the next episode.